Starborn Café by Miss Yuki 1990. Chapter 14. First Sign of Trouble.
Do you see anything?
Tasha asked over the comlink. Nothing, Tony said. Tasha and Clint looked up when Thor and Tony flew over them. They were on their way to investigate the point of impact, and Tony and Thor went ahead to take a look from the air.
Do you have any idea who may have arrived? Clint asked, glancing at Tasha.
No, I have tried to contact Asgard, but something is wrong with the communication lines,
Thor reported, and they stopped when they reached the site of impact. Thor and Tony landed while Steve, Tasha, Clint, and Bruce got out of their car. Thor walked into the middle of the circle on the ground and looked around while Bruce took out his gear.
I'm getting messed up readings,
Tony said while Bruce walked around the circle and the others took a look around.
Can you see how many passed through?
Clint asked.
Nothing, Tony grumbled. I get absolutely nothing. Bruce, Steve called out, and Bruce looked at him before he shook his head.
Nothing, the Gamma scientist answered, eyes glowing green, telling everyone that Bruce and Hulk were working together.
Damn it,
Clint muttered.
We should go back, Natasha advised. We can do nothing here. Until we can contact Asgard, I think our best course of action would be to go back to the tower and get ready for the worst.
I'll try to contact Asgard again,
Thor said.
I shall see you at the tower.
With that, Thor spun his hammer and flew away.
See you then.
Tony flew off.
I hope it's not an enemy, Steve said as they entered the car with Natasha at the driver's seat.
We should have known something would happen, Bruce muttered. Everything was too calm for far too long.
I hope you're wrong, Steve murmured. I sure hope you're wrong.
Hadaven hissed when a glass broke in his hand.
Damn it!
He looked at his palm, taking out the few pieces of glass that embedded themselves in his skin before putting his hand under water to wash away the blood. Hadaven was restless. He simply couldn't relax. His magic was circulating quickly in his veins, and he was worried. He was very worried. He looked up at the mirror on the ceiling and frowned. He hadn't heard from Erd ever since he returned to the cafe. He tried calling out to her, but all he got was silence. Heavy, ominous silence.
What is going on?
He murmured and looked back at his hand. He covered it with his other hand, and with a wave of magic the wounds were healed. He dried his hands with a hand towel and cleaned up the sink. With a sigh he made his way towards his loft. Just as he was about to go up, he felt a wave of warmth pass over his back. At least I won't think too much, he thought to himself, and returned to the cafe. The man that entered was familiar to him, and Hadaven found himself slightly surprised when he realized who exactly it was that entered. Master Wayne! Welcome! The man looked at him with a raised eyebrow.
I heard you're quite precognitive, but to be perfectly honest, I hadn't believed it.
The vigilante of Gotham City spoke, slowly making his way towards Hadaven.
I am not precognitive, Master Wayne, Hadaven chuckled. I am merely well informed.
Bruce offered his hand to Hadaven, gifting the bartender with a small smile.
Bruce Wayne, it is a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Alfred had nothing but praises for you.
Hadaven Sigurdsson,
the bartender spoke with a grateful bow of his head.
I hope I will live up to your expectations.
Bruce chuckled, and Hadaven showed him over to the bar.
I'm sure you will.
Bruce took a seat, and Hadaven started preparing him a drink.
Tell me, how is Alfred?
He is at home making sure my business goes as planned. After the last time he came back from paying a visit to you, I decided to come and see you for myself.
Hadaven smirked as he placed a cup in front of Bruce. The man raised an eyebrow at the wine glass filled to the middle with a burgundy liquid. The air was filled with the scent of nature. He took the glass in his hand and spun the liquid around. Its texture was light and flowing, and it was glistening in the weak light of the cafe.
Interesting.
Bruce glanced at Hadaven before he took a sip. His eyes widened as the slightly chilled drink flowed down his throat, leaving behind the taste of various herbs and pine syrup.
This is delicious. I had only ever tasted your warm drinks. I hadn't expected this.
Hadaven's eyes glimmered as he ducked his head a bit, lips tilting into a mysterious smile.
That is because Alfred told me you worked a lot, and I thought you would need something that would calm you and refresh your mind. Now it's time for you to relax a bit.
Hadaven explained, and Bruce nodded in understanding and agreement, shifting in his seat to find a more comfortable position.
May I ask what you made this with?
He asked, circling the glass and watching the drink ripple against the walls.
It is a combination of several herbal liqueurs, attenuated with cold mint tea with just a bit of cognac.
Bruce looked at the cup with a raised eyebrow.
I can't taste the alcohol at all,
he said in slight wonder, and Hadovan smiled.
That is because I buy older bottles. I know that many don't drink alcoholic drinks because of the bitter taste it leaves behind. Alcohol evaporates after some time in any drink, leaving behind only the taste of the herbs or fruit the drink is made of.
Which cognac do you use?
Bruce asked, honestly interested, not expecting to be shocked when he raised the glass to his lips.
La Fontaine de Pauillet Cognac, year 1923.
Bruce almost choked on the sip he took, straightening and raising a hand to wipe his chin.
Excuse me, but are you insane?
Hadovan laughed merrily.
After a few moments, Bruce relaxed in his seat and shook his head with a chuckle.
I'm afraid I'm not insane, Master Wayne. I only want to serve the best to my guests.
Bruce huffed, lips tilting up, and he looked at Hadovan with intrigued scrutiny.
Alfred did tell me that you're a special man.
The bartender shrugged, avoiding Bruce's intense stare.
I am not that special.
Bruce snorted.
So a RED classified ex-special agent turned bartender is nothing special.
Hadovan tensed up for a second before he chuckled, leaned back on the bar cabinet behind him, and crossed his arms over his chest.
I could have guessed,
he muttered, looking at Bruce with a calm stare.
I have to admit,
Bruce crossed his arms on the bar.
When I read your files, I was quite worried. The more Alfred spoke about you, the more interested I grew. I just couldn't make the connection between the best special agent the world has ever seen and the calm, collected, welcoming, kind bartender Alfred kept talking about.
Hadovan tilted his head to the side, and Bruce almost shivered when he looked in Hadovan's soulful eyes.
What do you think now?
I think...
Bruce's voice faded, and he tilted his head to the side, biting into his bottom lip before he huffed and shook his head.
I think that you're a man who saw his fair share of pain and suffering. I think you've sacrificed a good deal of your life for others, and that, even though it may not seem like it, you're still sacrificing a lot on a daily basis.
Bruce looked around, feeling Hadovan's gaze, observing him watchfully, and he turned towards the bartender again, offering Hadovan a small smile.
This cafe, I think that even though you're happy here, and even though you obviously love your job, you're still repaying for something.
Hadovan chuckled and shook his head.
Am I wrong?
Bruce asked, and Hadovan looked at him.
No, you're right. This job...
Hadovan looked around.
I guess it is my way of seeking redemption. I took many lives, and even though I saved many in that way, I can't help but feel guilty. This way I offer sanctuary to those who need it, peace, counsel, and comfort to those who come seeking for it, and a quiet place for those who need some time with their thoughts.
Bruce nodded.
You are a one-of-a-kind man, Hadovan.
Hadovan bowed his head at him shortly.
Thank you, Master Wayne.
Bruce, just Bruce.
Hadovan smiled and nodded his head. Bruce drank the last of his drink and offered the glass to Hadovan, who chuckled when Bruce gave him a milder version of a puppy dog look.
May I ask for another?
Of course.
Bruce smiled and looked around while Hadovan prepared him another drink. He finally understood what had Alfred coming back here time and time again. He hadn't felt so much at peace in a long, long time.
Here you go,
Hadovan said, and placed another glass in front of Bruce, receiving a grateful smile.
Thank you.
Even though those were just two simple words, Hadovan had a feeling much more was said. Thor cursed and threw his mirror on the bed. No matter how much he tried, he simply couldn't contact anyone in Asgard. Not only that, but his heart was restless. He couldn't stop worrying about Hadovan. He couldn't ignore that ominous feeling that settled in the pit of his stomach when Hadovan went back to the cafe before he and the rest of the Avengers left to check out the site of impact. Thor? He turned around and looked at Bruce. The Gamma scientist was standing in the doorway with arms crossed over his chest. Anything? Thor shook his head.
Nothing! It is as though a barrier was put around Asgard, and no communication is possible. But why?
He growled and took a seat, resting his elbows on his knees and covering his lips with entwined fingers. Bruce ran his fingers through his hair and walked into Thor's room, leaning back against a wall facing Thor. I have a bad feeling, he confessed quietly, and Thor looked at him from under messy bangs.
I do as well.
About Hadovan?
Thor nodded. I do not like the fact that we do not know who arrived on Earth. I cannot contact Asgard, and I cannot stop worrying about Hadovan.
Bruce sighed and rubbed his face with his hands. Hulk is restless as well. He doesn't know what, but he's sure something's coming. Thor's frown darkened, and he looked towards the door at the sound of footsteps.
Is something wrong?
Bruce asked Steve, who just entered Thor's rooms.
Tony got some strange atmospheric readings, Steve reported. He and Tasha are trying to determine what it is, but they have nothing yet.
So the best thing to do right now is to stay here and wait.
Bruce said, sounding utterly displeased while Thor grunted and squeezed his fingers tighter together.
I'm afraid that's all we can do.
Steve sighed.
Should we call Hunnivan over?
Thor frowned, staying quiet for a long moment as he contemplated an answer to Steve's question.
No,
He finally said.
I believe that he is safer at the cafe. As much as I have seen, he has powerful protection spells surrounding the whole building,
Thor said, although he didn't sound all that certain.
Thor, what's wrong?
Bruce asked carefully.
I do not know.
Thor pressed out through clenched teeth, stood up, brushed his hands through his hair, and walked over to the window, looking at the streets below them.
I worry about him. I wish to have him close in case anything happens, but I want him safe in case of danger, which would mean that he has to stay in the cafe.
Thorvin isn't exactly helpless,
Steve reasoned, although he couldn't conceal his own worry.
We have all seen just a fragment of his power.
I know,
Thor muttered.
but even the most powerful people can be caught off guard.
Steve and Bruce exchanged a glance, both knowing just how true Thor's words were.
We just have to trust in his abilities.
Bruce said, although his eyes were filled with worry as well.
Yes,
Thor murmured and looked out the window at the dark clouds.
we just have to hope.
Hunnivan laughed and shook his head.
Alfred is a wonderful man.
The Wainair nodded and chuckled.
I don't know if I've ever told him, but I love him as though I would love my own father. He raised me. He was the only person that was with me through thick and thin. I don't know what I would do without him.
Hunnivan smiled and tilted his head to the side.
I can tell that you love him, and I have seen his love for you. He constantly worries for your well-being.
Bruce's lips tilted into a small smile, and he chuckled quietly, shaking his head with a wistful countenance.
I should go.
He looked at the grandfather clock on the bar.
I have a lunch date with a few clients tomorrow.
I hope everything goes well.
Harrivan spoke while Bruce stood up and pulled on his cloak, waiting for Harrivan to round the bar before shaking the bartender's hand.
Thank you for the drinks, Van.
Bruce said, and Harrivan shook his head.
Thank you for your company, and please greet Alfred for me when you see him.
I will.
Bruce promised, and Harrivan gifted him with a small smile.
Stay safe,
he said, and turned to leave. In that moment, a cold shiver ran down Harrivan's back, and his breath caught in his throat. "Bruce, wait!" He jumped forward and grabbed Bruce's forearm, pulling him back and earning a confused frown from the vigilante. The door opened, and a man Harrivan's height walked in. He was slim, almost sickly slim, and he reminded Harrivan of Severus Snape, a bit too much for comfort. His black hair was gelled back, a sly smirk stretching thin lips, blue eyes shining with maliciousness. "Good day," he said, and Harrivan shivered. The low, hissing undertone of the newcomer's voice made the small hairs on the back of Ven's neck stand up. Bruce frowned and looked at Harrivan when the bartender stepped in front of the vigilante.
"Good day."
Harrivan spoke carefully, and Bruce took a small step to the side, feeling something electrifying snap against his skin. The stranger looked around and snorted when he looked at the ceiling.
"I wanted to meet you for a while now, Harrivan Sigurdsson,"
he said, lips stretching into a mockery of a smile.
"I wanted to meet the one my brother was destined for. Loki."
Harrivan pressed out in a strained whisper, and Bruce's eyes widened. "What?" he breathed out and unconsciously crouched a bit. Loki snickered and took a step forward.
"I suggest we handle this calmly and without incidents,
In front of their eyes, Loki's clothes changed into a suit of armor. A golden staff appeared in his hand with a glowing blue gem the size of a man's fist at the top.
"I would like to save my strength for my brother."
The gem glowed, and impulsively Bruce moved to stand in front of Harrivan. "Bruce, no!" Harrivan shouted and ran forward, and then everything faded into light. Thor felt a cold shiver run down his spine, and he stood up. "Thor!" Tony called out when Thor walked over to the window and looked at the quickly darkening sky.
Is something wrong? Natasha asked.
I felt as though a cold hand gripped my heart.
Thor spoke and clenched his hand on his chest, his black t-shirt scrunching up on his fist, and the rest of the Avengers exchanged worried glances. Thor swallowed over the lump that suddenly appeared in his throat, and a shiver ran down his spine.
I must go, Hanavan,
He murmured and turned around quickly.
I have his number.
Bruce said and stood up. Wait! Clint warned and stood up as well, followed by the others. Thor frowned and turned around. In the distance, the clouds started to twist into a tornado-like mass.
Ah, hell no.
Tony cursed, and in that moment, the skies opened.
Not again.